What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, we are talking with Parker Newman. We're talking about City of Demons, which is going to be live on Zoop very soon. It's an indie comic published by Wise Acre Comics. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So to get right into this, and once again, I have to talk about the fact that I did get a little bit of an advanced copy, and I am digging the story so far. How this basically was perpetuated that you wanted to do as your first comic, something in crime noir. Now,
Right.
why choose this aspect of genre that you wanted to do?
I've always loved, different crime stories, detective stories. I've always loved period pieces.
Mhm.
And for me, obviously I loved comics my whole life. And for me, making a comic book series, I did not see many comic book stories that were like this, that were very grounded. There's like in the story I have, there's no supernatural element. It's all very grounded period piece detective story.
Mhm.
And so I thought that's something I haven't seen really done before, especially in the independent space. And I would just really like to tackle that and see what I could do. The idea originally started out as a screenplay. I'm a videographer. I do commercial work for different brands and companies.
Mhm.
And so about 3 years ago, I wrote a screenplay for a pilot of what was supposed to be like a TV miniseries.
Okay.
I really liked it, and then but I really like comics, so I decided to turn the screenplay into a comic, which in a way is the first essentially two issues. And yeah, it was something that always really excites me. I love history and 1920s. I think aesthetically, it's you have a lot to play with, in terms of the illustrations. And yeah, it was just something that really excited me and still excites me as I continue to finish out the series.
Did you feel as though, because I feel like the setting plays
Right,
like a big part in all of this. Uh,
right.
Aside from the fact, of course, this is 1924 Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Was it intentional to go grayscale, black and white, as opposed to showcasing possibly what essentially a scene in 1924 LA
Right.
would look like if it was in color? Was it intentional to go with that particular look?
Yes. So yes and no. So I knew from the beginning I wanted to be black and white just because again I think we could play around a lot with shadow work, a lot of like the classic noir look,
Hmm.
but kind of put our own spin on it. To be honest with you, initially, when I was looking for artists and when I was even doing my own initial like illustrations to give off as references, my initial idea was to do simply two-tone black and white. So it'd be harsh whites, harsh blacks. I guess similar to like what Frank Miller did with like Sin City.
Yeah.
Just have that, but then I showed that around. I think I essentially paid five artists to give like their own spins on a lot of my concept work, and the guy I eventually ended up with Kingsley Ezeh, um, is like he put the own grayscale on it, and it had this really nice texture to it
Hmm.
that I did not even know I wanted. And once I saw it and saw it in action many times, I was like, oh, this is even better than what I could have hoped for. So keep doing that. And then that's essentially how it is. Our whole relationship is he'll do something I didn't even think of, whether it put like his own spin on a character or the way he'll frame. Essentially, I call it just frame the camera within a panel,
Yeah.
and where I'm like, oh, do that again for this. So yeah, it's always exciting to see what he brings to the table each issue. So it's really exciting.
Now, would you say that your perspective as a videographer actually helped you with the creative process of this particular comic? Being as how you kind of understand wholeheartedly how these scenes are going to be formulated. Like pretty much
Right.
when you're writing this particular screenplay, of course you're setting up exactly what each frame and each panel are like. So, did you actually like pull from that hat in order to relay that to your illustrator exactly how this was going to look, what angle it was going to take,
Right.
so on and so forth?
Right. So yes. So it's essentially so like again, my videography background, the script for a comic, anyone that's ever read a comic script is not the same as a screenplay. Like you in a comics where you go, panel one is this, panel two this, and then
Hmm.
if you get into this. In a screenplay, it's a lot. You don't really write, depends on really your role. But you don't really write shots in a
Hmm.
screenplay at all. So, but like, yeah, like I've been a visual person forever. Been a part of a lot of productions, and so it's like, yeah. So I understand inherently understand like a lot of visual language, but the learning curve for me was when I was adapting the screenplay to the first two issues. I realized that in a comic you can't have as much dialogue as maybe like, a movie, or like you have to be quicker to the point.
Hmm.
So relaying that because, in a panel, you have to give off a single image that relays all the possible movement that could have happened, before. So
Hmm.
and you can maybe chop it up to like in some panel works where you're showing the progression of the movement, but many times, just a single panel shows the movement and that communicates everything. So that when writing was a little bit of a learning curve because before I finished writing the first adapting the screenplay to the first issue, I cut out a ton of dialogue, a ton of scenes, and to make it quicker, more to the point, because for a comic, that's just how what it has to be.
Yeah.
So they're comparable mediums in that, yeah, they're both visual and you can use different camera angle looks to it. And like even my artist could tell you, on my scripts, I write like, okay, close up here. Oh, and this shot here, here's actually I'll give him like a bunch of reference photos from films.
Yeah.
Like, hey, there's a shot, if we could imitate this lighting effect. And Kingsley is great with lighting. Amazing. So it's like I'll say, hey, imitate this line effect here. This guy looks out a window. I want this line effect here, and the shadow work to be like this. And so I've shown him a bunch of shots from different movies, but more so I've just been falling back on more so just pre-established comic book knowledge.
Yeah.
So throughout this process, I've been looking back at other great comics and great comic book creators to see specifically in the medium of comics
Hmm.
what did they do because the way you tell stories in comics cannot be imitated exactly in any other art form.
Hmm.
It's a lot more emotionally immediate than like prose. So you're really communicating directly a story rather than interpreting it through your head, like when you're reading a novel.
Hmm.
And there's a lot more, I think, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot more immediate, like just you feel almost a bigger connection to, especially in independent work, a bigger connection to the creators
Yeah.
through a comic book than even like a film, most films, for instance.
Yeah.
So that was more or less realizing the specific and particular power of comics and that whole storytelling component. Because what kicked it off for me, what really made me realize that was a friend had recommended me and actually recommended me for years to read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing,
Yeah.
and I always put it off because I'm not a big monster guy that doesn't really connect with me. I'm like, I'm not really into that whole scene. But
Mhm.
I kept hearing, and obviously, I'm like anyone else. I like Alan Moore. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yep.
And his first, or really it's technically his second, but his first like real issue of Swamp Thing, anatomy lesson. Afterwards, I read it and it made me depressed because I was like, I don't know how I could ever write something a tenth that good.
Hmm.
The way it told its story was, I've read a ton of comics. I think that's the best single issue comic book issue I've ever read.
Hmm.
Like the way it told its story was only a way the comic book medium could have told that story. You
Right.
could not replicate that in a film, in a novel, anything like TV show. Like it had to be a comic book that the story played out that way, and it was. I was like, wow, and that's where I was like, okay, I need to start implementing that more so that this feels like something that a story that you can tell in unique ways, through the medium, and you'll see that more and more. Essentially, the first two issues I'm very proud of,
Yeah.
but even the future issues build upon, okay, how can we tell the story more specific to the comic book medium? And that's another part. Again, I'm excited to share the whole thing, so I hope people really love it.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this your protagonist, Lucas Short.
Mhm.
In these first two issues, there's two basic settings. You have him in 1918 World War I, where obviously he's a soldier in battle. And then you pretty much take that little bit of a leap, a little time jump into 1924, what we were talking about with the I'm gonna call it the underbelly of LA.
Right.
Or better yet, the pretty much the construction of LA. What we know as LA at that time, what we know of Hollywood, probably like the golden age of it during that time. But Lucas, the way that you crafted him or told this story about him, he's a no nonsense guy, and for the most part, stricken by war and the time that he had when he spent in the service, and then of course he joins the police force
Right.
directly after that, and people find him to be a little weird because you know outside things he does not get involved with. He is
Right.
somebody that's pretty much a stickler for his job, like he's a point A to point B back to A type
Right.
of guy. There is no in between. Now, when you were putting this personality on this
Mhm.
page, was there any inspirations that you drew from for that particular person?
Right. So yeah, so oh, the biggest inspiration was there's actually a cool little tidbit of history. So I think most people they read it like, wait, a black detective in LA, LA.
Hmm.
So LA, cool little tidbit of I guess LAPD lore is that as far back as the night as 19, it may have been 1918, they had I know before 1924 they had three black police officers,
Okay.
which was extremely rare. And shortly after, still in the late 1920s, they had a black female officer, extremely rare. So
Hmm.
this is a cool little part. Like LAPD was one of the first ever major metropolitan U.S. cities
Hmm.
to have black officers.
Yeah.
I thought if I could add the little bit of that in, that could be a cool little piece of history to have. And what I would love people to do is like read it and then go back and look at the history that inspired it.
Okay.
It's like the jazz music, the setting, like a lot of the broader Hollywood scandals that will be built into the story are directly inspired by real life Hollywood events. Um, but yeah, so Lucas Short was like the main inspiration just for the whole story. That character alone,
Yeah.
because what I always want to do is always generate drama, always generate conflict. And I thought 1920s, so you already have the beginnings of Hollywood. What is the most like in my mind unique character you could put in that situation?
Right.
And be a black man who is really just essentially, is kind of lost in a lot of ways, spiritually, psychologically, because he's in the first issue, he's in part of the LAPD, but he's just kind of essentially going through the motions.
Hmm.
He does what he's told to do. There's not much passion behind it. Like there's even that one quick little part where his partner asks him, "Why'd you even decide to, become a cop?"
Yeah.
He says, "I don't
I
remember
don't even
anymore."
remember anymore. Yeah.
And so, and again, there's little tidbits of his personal life, like you see the divorce papers, in the first full-ish frame of a 1924 of him in 1924, and there's all, and that's guys, the series goes on. You learn more about his personal demons. You learn more about the other characters' personal demons.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so yeah, like the name City of Demons, like obviously I mean, it's been funny because people think there'll be like demons in the book.
Hmm.
There are no demons. There was a guy who reviewed it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm really enjoying this, but I'm in issue." I gave him like six preview issues.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, he's like, I'm really enjoying this, but I'm really confused. I'm in issue 4 right now, and there's still like no demons." I'm like, I was like, "Oh no,"
Right.
but
They're
yeah, it's
not
like
understanding the metaphor.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
Right.
like the name is obviously a play on City of Angels,
Yeah.
but more than that, it's a play on that it refers to the personal demons each of the four main characters have. So you have Lucas, Lawrence K, the
Mhm.
PI, who then brings on who teams up with Lucas.
Yep.
You have Harry Boyle, who's one of the heads of one of the two warring LA mob families. His mob family mostly has power in the like small businesses and police force.
Hmm.
Then you have Marcus Sullivan, the newly appointed, because of a recent murder, the newly appointed heir to the Sullivan crime family. That, as you learn more, and they're the head of a lot of the Hollywood studio system.
Yeah.
And as you learn out later in the series, really help establish Hollywood in LA.
Mm.
So so yeah, I just I can't wait for people to read all because every character has their moment to shine.
Yeah,
And with Lucas, again, it's funny because issue one, you're not even revealed the greater mystery in issue one.
yeah.
Like the biggest plot point, which is the death of I call him the Emperor,
Mhm.
um, Emperor Sullivan, and actually is shown, at least the aftermath of it is shown in issue two. But the big mystery is not shown in issue one because what I set out to do, and I knew it was a big risk, was I said the audience needs to know Lucas first. They have to be on his side. They have to understand him
Yeah,
before I can do anything else. Because my mantra when making this, when I write anything, is character first. Characters like I remember all these series. I remember like the best comic book series, the best books, movies. I Part of the ones that are like for me really great are because of the characters. The characters are amazing. I want to
mhm.
watch because of the characters. Um, so for me, it's like I have to get them on Lucas's side. I have to make him intriguing before I do anything else and take them on this journey.
Yeah. Because
So
the big, I guess, the big epicenter of the story is the crime boss family is being
mhm,
targeted by a mysterious killer, and they hire two
right,
PIs, and of course Lucas is a part of this duo
right,
that gets called into action. Now, you tend to what you've been basically talking about so far and how you've been constructing them. You've done a lot of history because, of course,
yeah,
there's a lot of uh, old Hollywood funded by the mob money that,
right,
of course, is also plays another big part where you basically brought up the fact of the African American police force and how that kind of like started with the few members that started during the early 1920s,
mhm,
1918. But yet that particular part, I feel as well as this part is just as essential because like it seems as though like you're pulling a lot from like historical events that happened
right.
in LA during that time. Now, I just put it out there. You're from LA?
No, so no,
No. Okay.
I'm from the other side of the country. I'm from North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
So yeah, but it's just something like that. The history around it was intrigued me, and but like the story as it progresses, and you'll get more. The story gets progressively as the mystery gets revealed, gets progressively darker.
Uh-huh.
What I've tried to do is, in order to find the killer, it becomes a search of motive
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
everything else. So it's essentially you're given in the comic, which I've talked to a lot of people on. I think it really works. Is you're given almost like a who done it, who's targeting this family,
Yeah.
and what I want the audience to begin thinking, and I've shown a lot of people, and they thankfully think this, is that goes from that to a question of why.
Right.
Why is this killer targeting this family? Why are these things happening? And it's that part is when you get this revealed the like the darker side of the origins of Hollywood and LA.
Mm-hmm.
That is where I think a lot of readers will really love it. And so far, I've talked to probably 40 people.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked them who they think and they've read the first six issues.
Yeah.
So the halfway through, it's going to be 12 issues when it's all said and done. I asked them, who do you think the killer is? Only one person has been able, just out of randomness, happened to guess the right person.
Oh.
I asked why, and they did not get that right.
Okay.
They were close. They were really, really close, but then they sort of took a left turn in their reasoning. I was like, oh, okay. But so, yeah, it's been really, really fun. The publisher of, Fred has, I asked him, he's read all, I asked him who he thought the killer was. He said, I don't even know at this point. He said, everyone could be it based on their motives, and everyone
Yeah.
has a motive to be the killer. And I was like, okay, great. This is good. Because if that's the halfway point, and if people are still guessing who it is at the halfway point, we're good.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's more the story I think is almost has more to say about a lot of Hollywood and the culture surrounding Hollywood now,
Mm-hmm.
probably even more than Hollywood back then. Because I mean, like now, like you mean like with a lot of the, I mean, obviously the Harvey Weinstein case. There's the
Yeah.
the P Diddy thing that's going on right now,
Yeah.
even a lot of the things that are like tangentially related to it, like the Epstein Island, like things you would have to be conspiracy theorists before to
Yeah.
even think of. But that culture has been in Hollywood, where it's very predatory, especially towards women, has been in Hollywood for ever and ever and ever. Like even since 1924, which was the silent era
Mm-hmm.
of Hollywood. That's where Hollywood was becoming Hollywood.
Right.
And it's in that because it was called Hollywoodland. They have like their the whole marketing of the town was a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So Hollywood was in the process of becoming the epicenter of American pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I thought was exciting to show and exciting to dive a little bit to the darker side of that mystery.
Right.
Um, because I mean, there's so much you can pick out from there, and it was interesting to me to place the two characters, Lucas Short and Lawrence Kay, the two PIs,
Right.
in the center of that, and because both those characters are essentially men that are like in spiritual chaos, and you
Oh
learn
yeah.
out why based on their personal demons, and you learn a lot more about each of them, and because of that, it's fascinating to look at it to have these two characters placed in this setting, really paid by a not very good person to solve this mystery. And I was like, oh, to put them in this conflicting situation, like I love that stuff. There's so
Yeah.
many layers of conflict and drama, and that's what keeps me reading anything. If
Yeah.
there's a drama drive, a lot of drama, a lot of conflict, I want to see how it resolves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was like, if I'm enjoying this, if hopefully people will enjoy it, and so far everyone's been really positive. So I hope that continues to sales. But yeah,
For sure. Now you decided to do this, or better yet, the entire series of City of Demons in a 12 issue miniseries.
right,
And you wanted them all to be almost like vignettes
yeah,
all the way through. Now, instead of one particular continuous story that you could have did from start to finish, you wanted to give people pieces, almost like chapters
right.
of this particular story. What do you feel as though, as opposed to some regular 26-page issue ones that might be out there for a lot of other comics that are out there. What made you want to chop this up in order to tell the story a little bit more evenly to the audience?
For me, it just came down to I don't think you need a ton of pages to tell a great story. It's
Hmm.
quick to the point. You read it, and I think a lot of the stuff, which I've been proud of, the issues, are like 20 pages, but it hits you. It gets right to the point. There's no time wasted at all. So you immediately know the characters, boom, 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 and like there are pieces like of issues that will be known as like the Lawrence K issue.
Yeah.
This is like the first one is clearly This is like a character portrait of Lucas Short.
Hmm.
This one is like so for me, it allowed him creatively the flexibility to dive into each character,
Hmm.
have their own moments, and even like have personal moments with the characters that are not directly related to the plot, but are directly give give you a further explanation of who they are and what. Because if you understand who they are, then their actions throughout the story make sense.
Right.
So why a character reacts to this like this, we explain why. Why is their attitude like this the whole story? We explain why, and it ties into the overall theme of the series,
Hmm.
which is really a lot of which is grief. So like that's the overall theme of the series, and a lot of characters, the two main characters, Lawrence K and Lucas, sort of working through that.
Yeah.
And so you see that character arc for both of them throughout the series, and that was something that again was just like it allowed me that flexibility without thinking, oh yeah, I need to add in other pages that reflect on this or do this. And so it just cut the fat off and
Yeah.
creatively it forced me not to waste the reader's time at all. And I think yeah, I still stand by. I think it's the right decision.
Definitely. Now, as far as the characters that you've created, and you said you're pretty much going to, within these different vignettes and within these different
Mm,
singular issues, you're going to have more character driven stories and
right.
how it's basically chopped up. Is it safe to say that most of these characters are going to have a look in the mirror moment of certain things that might be happening to them and be like, you know what? You're basically a part of your own demise.
Yes, for some of them, it may not come until the very end, but yes. So yes. For instance, like each of them, I think will at some point in the story, and I can just say they will, will see that each of them are their own worst enemy.
Right. They got to get out of their
And,
own way.
right, in their own way. But the resolution from that will be very different for each character because some characters will realize that way too late. Other characters will realize that just at the right time, right before they, go essentially go off a cliff.
Okay.
And so it's yeah, every character, and again, this is what I really think this will really drive the readers more so than than in my opinion, more than the bigger mystery.
Yeah.
Well, that each of these characters, I've been very proud. I think are very well defined, are really intriguing in their own way.
Hmm.
And like Marcus Sullivan, like Lucas is my personal favorite character of the series, but
Hmm.
Marcus Sullivan, I think he's the most interesting character of the whole series.
Okay.
He's always planning, and him and the other mob boss, I
Hmm.
think our readers are really going to love is that it's very political. So the introduction of the serial killer, they each use the introduction of the serial killer to their own political advantage. So, for instance, Harry Boyle at some parts doesn't want the killer to be found
Right.
because he still wants the other, Sullivan to be guessing, and he wants them to play all this game. And so, like it's kind of Game of Thronesy in that way. So both of them are playing their own political games, their own power struggles, and they're using like Marcus Sullivan will use the introduction of the killer to sort of um, disguise or really distract from his really a lot of his hidden actions against the members of his own family who
Mm.
are plotting against him. And so it's a lot of this back and forth. And in between that, you have, Lucas and Lawrence investigating, following the killer's path. So there's multiple layers of subplot that all directly tie together, and I think readers
Yeah.
are really, really going to love it.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it's on in the beginning. If
Mhm.
I'm just reading this as a summary, you're
Yeah,
thinking, okay, this is a who done it. This is a who done it mystery, almost in a broader sense of how noir is basically brought out. But
right,
yet, n- after the fact, because of how this is pretty much drawn up, it branches out
right,
into the political aspects that you're talking about. How interesting this mob family, and better yet, the leaders of this crime family tend to be,
right,
or better yet, how Lucas has to deal with some of his own inner demons himself, all while dealing with this case.
right.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous work, man. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
oh no, no, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, I was just going to say it's like, but the back and forth between the two mob families, the political, power moves, that is for me maybe the most fun I've had writing
Yeah.
because me creatively thinking, okay, oh, this family could use, or this character could use the introduction, this killing of on Sullivan's. He could use it like this way politically to move here and do, and so it's just been a lot of fun and yeah, yeah. I can't wait for the readers to see that because I don't think there's been a lot of that type of storytelling in a lot of murder mysteries.
It's true.
So I think they're really going to enjoy it.
Definitely. Now, also, you've obviously must have been paying attention to the indie scene for a little bit because you
Yeah.
decided not to release this on Kickstarter and you did it on Zoop.
Right. Well, that was a decision made between myself and and my publisher, Frederick Littles.
Yep,
And so Zoop is really popping off as a big, because it's exclusive to comics, as a
it
big
is.
crowdfunder for independent comics. And so right now we're testing it out. I really love it. Again, as like independent comic book fan, I love that's just comics, and I could find, and discover a million great titles.
Hmm.
Because to be honest with you, the independent scene has by far the best writing and the most unique art to me that like really stands out.
Yeah,
Um, the big the big publishers, I think the storytelling is not as great as it should be.
very true.
So the independent scene though right now, if anyone wants great stories, look at independent comics. There's, in my opinion, a million more great stories out there than what you're going to find in the bigger publishers.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been yeah, so I'm so far I really like Soup. I think again the layout of it's great. So yeah, independent comics, go there, try check it out. We will probably have a Kickstarter campaign after for future issues.
Okay.
But just because the base is bigger probably on Kickstarter, but
Yeah.
we're trying out Soup right now. Just really checking out to see if it's, something that we want to continue doing. But so far I'm loving it. So it's yeah.
Perfect. Now I have to ask, what drew your attention to Frederick Little's and Wise Acre Comics?
Yeah, so the publication history of City of Demons is kind of interesting. So for a lot of for anyone wondering, for comic book submissions, typically they want a cover letter, a detailed outline, a Corey letter, which essentially is like one or two lines selling the comic,
Yeah,
and
like
then
basically like a pitch.
yes, and
Yep.
then a marketing proposal, which is like your target audience. What is this book like? So, I mean, it's five, I guess. And then what else was there? There was a oh yeah. Sometimes they want character outlines.
Hmm.
They also want this was across the board, 10 pages of finished art. So
Wow.
for me, I had the first 10 pages fully finished. And the
Mhm.
first 10 pages were the flashback to World War One and the introduction of Lucas to the 1924 setting.
Okay.
And I think it's a really strong start. So I was really confident with the first 10 pages I had, really confident with the pitch and the outline. And I shop it around and I got a lot of rejections. And it made me feel bad because I'm like, I think what I have here is really good. I like, why? And a bigger publisher gave me a rejection. And I think I was just kind of frustrated.
Hmm.
So I asked them, I just emailed back. I've never done this. I emailed back, like essentially why.
Yeah.
And like I was like, is there anything wrong with it? Can you give me like tips to improve? And they said, oh no, there's nothing wrong with it. I remember this like clear as day.
Hmm.
Oh no, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, the person who wrote back said, I really enjoyed it. And I kept on reading, it's like, but it's your first one. And I was
Okay.
I don't know. Typically, when I hear that, it's kind of I guess I kind of get what they're saying. Like, oh, there's not going to be a big following with this creator, or he hasn't proved
Okay.
himself yet.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's like,
You don't want to break new artists or new
yeah,
creators?
like I'm only 25, so like you can invest into a new young guy, create a working relationship, a professional relationship early on.
Yeah.
And especially if you like the first 10 pages, because like I thought I was going crazy because I was like, this is real. Like, I like the art. I think it's a solid pitch.
Yeah.
And then I actually found a publisher so I got two offers, and then I found one in Blood Moon Comics.
Yeah.
Blood Moon was had a relatively decent following in like the horror comic scene,
Yeah.
big for that. And then so they got City of Demons, and 2 months, less than 2 months actually, before it was the City of Demons issue one was supposed to be released. Um, I was calling. I called the publisher to be like, hey, when our pre-order is going to be available because we need to get this going.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, we're shutting down.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, why? And he's like, check the news with Diamond.
Oh,
And so I took
yeah,
the
yeah,
phone and I was like, oh, and Diamond went bankrupt.
yeah.
Their contract was just with Diamond, and they had a bunch of books, just essentially, wasting away money. And
Crazy.
I guess in some lot somewhere or something. So he was losing, just bleeding money out because these books are not going anywhere. They're not going to an LCS.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, a lot of LCSs were hit hard. My local comic book shop, I think, is closing up because of it.
Hmm.
And he was telling me, and I did not know this beforehand, I guess naively, but um, Keith Rommel, who was the head of Blood Moon, was telling me that their relationship with Diamond had been so bad actually for years. He said Diamond had been horribly mismanaged. They would a lot of books would not deliver, and this is huge, especially for independents, would not be delivered on time.
Yeah.
And so books that were supposed to be monthly, and I'm a big believer that, especially for independent comics where no one really knows you, you have to deliver on time. You have to be monthly. And
Fulfillment is big.
yeah, so you have to be there on time because people go there on those times to, get what they've signed up for. And that just wasn't happening with Diamond. And that apparently that had been going on for a while. And it was heartbreaking because he was talking to me. He said, it's like, yeah, like we had, several books I was really looking forward to. He's like, yours was the chief one among them. And he said it was sad because he's like, and he was like, yeah, because we were shopped around your comic, and he's like, we got really good reviews from it. We got great, reception from a lot of our suppliers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, don't tell me that. But it was like, and then, yeah, because the way the whole thing with Diamond, the whole deal works out is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
you go to Diamond and say, hey, we have this book, and generally they just look at the cover and say, okay, we want, I don't know, like 10,000 issues of this. And
Yeah.
so then the publisher has to print that, and so that it's just like no other book publisher market like does not work that way. Like
Yeah.
Diamond had a monopoly in the whole thing, and I saw a lot of people go, "Oh, thank goodness!" Like post, "Thank goodness Diamond's gone." I was like, "No, no! Like people's dreams are dying now. Like I
Yeah.
get Diamond's issues, but this is not good for anyone." And so for me, I was like, "Oh, dude, I just got in comics at like inadvertently got into comics at the worst possible time," and so I was like, "Oh, awesome!" And And to make this is a side note, but it's funny in hindsight.
Right.
To make it funny, that day was horrible because I was talking to this girl and then just didn't end up didn't working. I was like kind of bummed out. It was just a rough day at work. So I'm like, I just finished working out afterwards. I was like, okay, trying to call Keith, and I get told that, oh yeah, by the way, the book's not going to be, the company's going under. I was like, oh, this day sucks.
Uh-huh.
It's like so, yeah, that day was crazy, and then. But right before that, I went on a podcast and I had been referred to. Um, this is bad. I'm blanking on her name, but I've been referred to a woman who's a big independent comic book sort of reviewer and personality based in the UK.
Okay.
And so I messaged her on Instagram saying, "Hey, do you have like any possible publishers you think our comic would be a good fit for?"
Hmm.
And she named at the very top, she named Wise Acre Comics. And so I heard of Frederick Little's a little bit because of his connection to Godhood.
Yes.
A lot of people who follow the independent scene, got the whole story of Godhood,
Yep.
how they've done very well and have branched off to other things. So I knew Frederick Little's, I knew Magnus,
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, I know exactly who this guy is. And I was like, I'll reach out to him, but I was like Magnus, like it's a really good comic, but I was like, it's not City of Demons. It's very different. I don't know because you don't know the person.
Yep.
I watched interviews of him, but I was like, I don't know if he'll connect with this because it's so like I was in my head I was like he likes superheroes. This is not like superhero at all. And I sent it to him, and he got back saying, I love this. And he's like, this really connected with me. And so we talked it out. I signed on to Wise Acre, and he's been great. So I've sent him issues because the whole time as an artist, you're doubting yourself, like, will this connect to someone?
Yeah.
I'll read the issues, and he's been like, this is great. And so like, he's like, keep doing this. I was like, I don't know who the killer is, and so yeah, working with Fred has been great. He's very aggressive and in
He
pursuing
is,
opportunities, and that
especially with getting pages out there because he has that
yeah,
utilization with Global Comics. And it
right,
was like, okay, if you just got a sneak peek, what you got, 10 pages? Let's put it
yeah,
out. They're like,
yeah.
now? Yeah, now.
No, it's so he's great on that because it's um, like my previous publisher, and this is no disrespect,
Yeah.
was not like it just wasn't like that. And so he's been in my opinion, a big breath of fresh air.
Mhm.
Like we even have a group chat where all the creators can show off our artwork and talk to each other and get feedback.
Mhm.
So that's been collaborative, and like I hope I get to meet these people at Comic Con. And so just every little thing like that, like he's great in terms of I get feedback from him because not only is he a publisher, but he's like a legit writer. And he's a
Mhm.
really good writer, and he understands storytelling.
Oh yeah.
So when he says, "Hey, this is good," I know it's actually good. Um, because again, like I knew his reputation from Magnus, and to be like, I was so apprehensive, like, oh, will he like this? And to hear that, oh, he likes it, and he himself is asking me when I can turn in more issues so he can, finish the story.
Yeah.
Not just because he wants to get done, but because he's sincerely enjoying it, almost
Yeah,
like
he
a
wants to
fan.
read more.
Yeah, that's where I was like, okay, I think, and I truly believe this with City Demons. Like the whole creative team feels this. I do think we are really onto something.
Mhm.
And if we finish it the right way, it all depends on how you finish it, a la Game of Thrones. But if we finish it the right way, I think like this close to making something like just really, really great.
Good.
I think the first issue is really solid. I think the overall, the second issue introduces you to all the characters is solid, and it still makes time for really nice character moments and character beats. It's I feel like if people just give it a chance, even
Mhm.
if you may not like more grounded stories, if you just like good stories and
Yeah.
you like great characters, give it a shot because I'm really convinced people will like it. And like again, I've shown it off to people who, read a lot more supernatural stuff. And because of the characters, they want to keep on reading. And because of the
Oh,
mystery,
yeah.
they keep asking themselves, oh, who did what? And so that's been the biggest compliment. It's been like, okay, I feel like we're really onto something. And yeah, it's just to have a publisher who believes that as well is really awesome.
Dope. Now,
Yeah.
your creative team, if you could shout them out.
Yeah, so obviously me, writer creator, and then our artist, our super talented artist, Kingsley Ezeh,
Mhm.
and then our letterist, Nikki Powers.
Okay.
So Kingsley he was interesting. He
He did the penciling and he did the coloring.
and he did the coloring, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then yeah, no, super talented. He Yeah, so we have a small, tight creative team. Obviously for budgetary reasons, but also
Yeah.
for me, it was just less people to go through to communicate
Yep.
X, Y, and Z. And so so for like Kingsley, his work, he had with some friends had made like some independent superhero comics, and I had found his work on social media. And then um and so I looked at it and like a lot of people would say, well, how could you find the connection between like a noir detective story and like superheroes and all this?
Hmm.
I said, well, his person that like the faces were so expressive, and his panel layouts were so dynamic, and the poses
Yeah.
communicated so much storytelling and really communicate character. And I said, if he can bring that sort of dynamic, outlook on characters and the page layout to a noir comic, great, because in a noir comic, there's typically a lot of talking, a lot of like detective work.
Right.
And so to keep your interests visually, to have these dynamic, very expressive characters interact in that space would just make it even better. Um, and that's where I was like, that could be something we bring in that a lot of other detective stories don't necessarily have. Because a lot of detective stories, I read one recently by Image, and the art's great, but it doesn't have a sort of dynamic energy to it
Hmm.
from the visuals alone that Kingsley inherently brings based off his own taste
Right.
and from his work by doing independent like superhero stuff.
Right.
So it's not trying to be this grimy look. It's trying to quickly communicate story and quickly communicate character. And it's clean. I think that's the most important thing. It makes it
It
look
is.
professional. It's clean. It's not a lot of black and white comics, even on the independent scene, are not particularly clean. And this one is super clean work. It looks professional.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, really enjoy working with him.
Absolutely, man. So, as far as the book, when it's with the impending release, of course, when it's happening on Zoop,
Right.
what is the actual day that it's dropping?
So the date it's dropping, hold on one second. Thank you for reminding me. So the actual day it was dropping is going to be essentially June. Okay. It will be, sorry, it will be June 20th.
June 20th.
Correct.
And I know Zoop's campaigns, of course, differ from how they usually like do them on like Kickstarter and everything.
Right. Oh,
They
sorry, June 15th. It got changed.
15th.
Yeah, 15th, even earlier. So
All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So June 15th. Like but it's what we were talking about is like Kickstarter will give you like a set amount of days, however you feel like you want
right.
to fulfill your campaign. Where Zoop, it's kind of like I'm not going to say it's like free balling it a little bit, but it's like,
Yeah,
it's like let's when we get there, we'll get there. And
right,
and the thing is, Zoop also has the components because they are a comics only crowdfunding site to where they actually like help with the marketing to try and like
right.
keep the pushing happening with the book, so on and
Yeah.
so forth.
So I'm really excited to continue to see that work, because that's again a feature Kickstarter does not, unless you want to pay an arm and a leg. You want to see, yeah. So
And all they're doing is just changing the algorithm, so your stuff stays up top, so it gets
yeah,
more.
I, I mean, if you're, I've gotten a lot of mixed opinions on that,
Hmm.
so I can't completely disavow it, but
No,
I don't think it's particularly great. But yeah, so yeah, I'm again like just for everyone like support independent comics. It's the best storytelling still on the independent scene. Um, but yeah, it's great there are platforms like Zoop
yeah,
because especially with the mess with Diamond, again, historically, to be honest, like one of the worst times to be in comics, like
hmm,
period. And thankfully, Wise Acre Comics has avoided all that.
oh yeah, they ducked and
Um,
dodged all that.
yeah, so they dodged all. So like, yeah, thank goodness they dodged all of that because my previous publisher, again, has sizable enough following, did not dodge it at all.
Hmm.
And but that's a lot. Like a lot of a lot of comic book companies,
Yeah,
even the bigger independent ones,
hmm,
hit hard. And I don't know if they're going to really be back to normal. There's a lot of rumors that a lot of them are going to close soon.
yeah,
So I mean, we'll see. But yeah, so meaning it's more important maybe than ever to support independent comics they're not because Diamond really is not helping. Yeah.
absolutely. Parker, I appreciate you doing this with me, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, James.
Yeah, absolutely. So, City of Demons, of course, is going to be dropping June 15th on Zoop. The campaign, I'm not going to say it's everlasting, but just letting you know this is kind of like how Zoop runs things here. It kind of like formulates until and of course, when it starts building up steam, Zoop kind of like acts on that and of course provides marketing to a lot of people out there. So it is a good choice for a lot of independent comic book creators out there because it is comic centric. So for everybody here at the Facts Project, Parker Newman, Wise Acre Comics, City of Demons, going live in about a couple weeks. More so by the time you hear this podcast, this will of course be happening. So for everybody here, thank you again. Uh, for myself, James Grandmaster Facts Voice, Parker Newman. Once again, City of Demons on Zoop, June 15th. We will see everybody next time. We are out.